The moment my store manager called me into the back office, and I saw the old man from the checkout line sitting quietly in the chair across from her desk, wearing a pressed button-down shirt, hands folded in his lap, watching me with calm gray eyes. My first thought was that I had walked into the wrong meeting entirely. He looked exactly the same as he had 3 weeks ago, a little rumpled, a little tired, the kind of man you see in a grocery store at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, and you think he probably has nowhere to be. I had no idea how wrong I was. Let me back up. I'd been working at Fairway Fresh for going on 4 years by then. It wasn't glamorous. It was a mid-sized grocery chain in Raleigh, North Carolina. Not a Whole Foods, not a Walmart, somewhere in between. We had a loyal customer base, decent hours, and a manager named Brenda who'd been running the floor for 11 years and treated the place like her own living room. I was a shift supervisor, which meant I handled the registers, covered breaks, dealt with whatever small disasters a Tuesday afternoon could throw at you. That particular Tuesday had been slow, the kind of slow where you reorganize the candy rack twice just to feel useful. My cashier on register 4, a college kid named Tyler who called everyone boss, even though I was maybe 5 years older than him, had gone on break, so I'd stepped in to cover. The old man came through alone. He had a handbasket, not a cart, which told me he wasn't doing a big shop. Bread, a can of soup, a small thing of orange juice, a box of crackers. The kind of basket that made you think, he's eating alone tonight. He set everything on the belt carefully, one item at a time, and he didn't look at his phone because I don't think he had one out. He just stood there, calm and patient, with his hands at his sides. "Hi there," I said. "Hello," he said. He had a low, even voice, the kind that didn't waste anything. I rang everything through, $6.42. He pulled out his wallet, a worn brown leather thing that had seen better decades, and slid a card across the counter. It declined. I've worked registers long enough to know how to handle this without making it a thing. I kept my expression neutral, turned the screen slightly away from the line behind him, and said quietly, "I'm sorry, it looks like this one didn't go through. Do you have another card, or?" He looked down at the wallet. Something moved across his face that I can only describe as controlled embarrassment, the kind a person gets when they have lived most of their life never being caught off guard. And then suddenly they are, in a grocery store, over $6.42. "I may have grabbed the wrong one," he said. He rifled through the wallet slowly. I could see him doing the math, checking what he had. Behind him, 2 people had formed a loose line, not impatient yet, but getting there. I didn't think about it for more than a second. I reached into my apron pocket, pulled out the $7 I'd put there that morning for a vending machine coffee I hadn't ended up buying, and I set it on the counter next to his groceries. "This one's on the house today," I said. Just that. I hit the cash button myself, finished the transaction, and put his bag together. He looked at me for a moment. "That isn't necessary," he said. "I know," I said. "Have a good afternoon." He took the bag. He nodded once, the way certain men of a certain generation nod when they don't quite have words for something but they want you to know they're not dismissing it. Then he walked out. I didn't think about it again. Or not much. The kind of thing you do in a day and then it's done. What I did think about, more than I wanted to, was my assistant manager. His name was Craig, and he had been at Fairway Fresh for 8 months. He'd come in from a regional management program, the kind of corporate pipeline that takes people with business degrees and no retail experience and puts them above people who have been doing the job for years. He was 29 years old. He wore a lanyard with his name on it even though everyone already knew his name. He called the sales floor the floor space and talked about traf optimization when what he meant was moving the chip display 6 inches to the left. Under Brenda, the store ran well. She'd built something that actually worked. Staff who showed up, customers who came back. A culture where people treated each other like adults. Craig seemed to find this arrangement personally inconvenient. He had a particular focus on the supervisors, on me, specifically. I think because I'd been there longest and I didn't defer to him the way newer staff did. I wasn't rude. I did my job. But I also didn't laugh at his jokes about foot traffic metrics. And I think he noticed. The small things dotted first. My schedule shifted to the least desirable hours without explanation. When I flagged the discrepancy in the weekend inventory, the report that came back listed it under his corrections, not mine. He started requiring supervisors to clear any customer accommodations, coupons, substitutions, anything outside the exact register protocol through him first, which was, practically speaking, impossible when the line is 6 people long and someone's coupon won't scan. I documented what I could. I mentioned it to Brenda once. She listened, she took it seriously, but Craig had the backing of the regional office, and there was only so much she could do. 3 weeks after the old man with the grocery basket, Craig called me in for what he called a performance alignment. I sat down across from him at the break room table. He had a folder. The folder made me nervous because I had not done anything that warranted a folder. I want to talk about register protocols, he said. He opened the folder. Inside was a printed transaction report. He pointed to a line. My register, the Tuesday afternoon transaction, $6.42, cash, no card. You processed this as a cash transaction, he said. But there was no cash tendered by the customer. You covered it out of pocket. I did, I said. It was $7. The customer's card declined and… That's not within your authority. I looked at him. It was my own money, Craig. You processed it through the register as a cash transaction, which creates a reconciliation issue and implies store-level approval of a policy that doesn't exist. He was reading from something. He had actually prepared remarks for this. Going forward, when a customer's card declines, you direct them to customer service, offer to hold their items, and do not under any circumstances cover the transaction yourself. That's the policy. I asked him what the customer was supposed to do in the meantime. He said that wasn't the register supervisor's concern. I asked him what the customer service desk was going to do differently. He said they had protocols. I asked him what protocols specifically. He said he didn't appreciate my tone. It went on like that for 20 minutes. At the end of it, he put a written notice in my file. Not a termination, not a suspension, a notice. The kind that means nothing on its own, but means everything when there's a pattern, when you're building towards something. I drove home that night and sat in my car in the parking lot of my apartment complex for a while before going inside. Not crying, just sitting. I knew what this was. I'd watched him do a version of it to 2 other people already. You don't fire someone who's done nothing wrong. You build a case, one minor infraction at a time, until they leave on their own or you have enough paper to justify letting them go. It was a particular kind of workplace cruelty because it was so small. Nothing dramatic enough to take to HR, just enough to wear a person down. The following 2 weeks were more of the same. He changed the supervisor sign-off procedure so that any cash transaction over $5 required a manager override, which in practice meant me standing at the register with a line of customers waiting while I called Craig on the walkie. He was not always quick to answer the walkie. A customer complained about wait times. Craig put a note in my file about managing customer flow. I started looking at other jobs, not desperately, just quietly. The way you do when you're not sure yet whether you're leaving or staying, but you want to know that the door is unlocked. Brenda knew something was happening. She checked in with me more than usual, brought me coffee once from the gas station down the street, which was not a thing she did. She couldn't say much, but she was paying attention. I was on register 3 on a Wednesday afternoon, 3 weeks after Craig's performance alignment meeting, when my walkie crackled and he told me to come to the back office when my current customer was done. My stomach dropped. I finished the transaction. I handed the register to the next available person. I walked to the back. I opened the door, and there was the old man. He was sitting in the chair beside Brenda's desk, which was now occupied by someone I didn't recognize. A woman in a dark blazer, mid-50s, with the posture of someone who was used to being the most senior person in a room. Brenda was standing against the wall. Craig was standing too, but differently, the way you stand when you'd rather be anywhere else. The old man looked at me when I came in, and there was recognition in his face, quiet and unhurried. "Please sit down," the woman in the blazer said. I sat. "My name is Diane Ostroff," she said. "I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Fairway Fresh. This is Mr. Bernard Holt. He's the founder of this company." I looked at the old man. He had the same calm gray eyes, the same economy of expression. "We've been doing a series of informal visits to our stores," Diane said. "Mr. Holt prefers to see things as they are, not as they're prepared to be seen." She paused. "3 weeks ago, he came through your register." I didn't say anything. "He's told me what happened," she said. "And over the past 3 weeks, we've been reviewing store operations here more broadly." She looked at Craig. It was a brief look, but it carried the entire weight of what was coming. "We have some concerns about management practices at this location that we'll be addressing," she said. "That process is going to start today." What I found out later in pieces was this. Bernard Holt had started Fairway Fresh in 1987 with one store in Durham. He'd grown it to 43 locations over 30 years before stepping back from day-to-day operations. He still came in, Brenda told me afterward, sometimes, not announced. He'd pick a store, wander through, buy a few things. He said he learned more in 20 minutes at a register than in a month of reports. His card had declined because he'd recently closed the joint account he'd shared with his wife, who had passed away 8 months earlier. He'd been meaning to update his wallet and kept forgetting. Brenda's voice got quiet when she told me that part. He had not identified himself to me. He had not followed up afterward. But he had, apparently, mentioned the transaction to Diane Ostroff when they were reviewing the store, not in a "here's a problem" way. More of a "here's something I noticed" way. And Diane Ostroff was a thorough person. When she started looking at the store, she found the pattern quickly. The schedule adjustments, the escalating write-ups, the way the management climate had shifted in 8 months. She'd seen it before, she told Brenda. The corporate pipeline produced a certain type. Craig was transferred to a role in regional inventory management that had no direct reports. I was told this by Brenda, matter-of-factly, on a Thursday morning, the way you tell someone a scheduling change had been made. Bernard Holt stopped by the store one more time before the end of that month. He came through my register again, a handbasket just like before. Bread, soup, orange juice, crackers. The exact same order, which I suspected was not a coincidence. This time his card went through. "No problems today," I said. "No," he said. He picked up his bag. Then he paused and looked at me in that direct, quiet way he had. "You didn't make a big thing of it." "It wasn't a big thing," I said. He considered that. "It was to me," he said. He nodded once, that same nod from the first time, the one that meant something but wasn't going to say what, and walked out. I've thought about that a lot since then. Not about what came after, though. What came after mattered. I got a formal commendation in my file, which was nice. I eventually moved into an assistant management role at a different location, a better one, working under someone who'd been doing this work for 20 years and treated her staff like they had brains. But what I think about is the version where none of the rest of it happened, where he was just an old man who came through my line on a slow Tuesday afternoon and needed $6.42, and I had 7, where nobody was watching, nobody was taking notes, and it didn't turn into anything at all. I would have done the same thing. That's what I keep coming back to. Not because I'm particularly noble or particularly generous. I've been on the other side of a declined card, standing at a register with a line behind me and not enough in my account, and I know what that specific kind of embarrassment feels like. It isn't about the money. It's about the moment, the way it slows everything down and makes you very aware of being watched. I just didn't want to add to it. Brenda came by my register later that day, after Bernard Holt had left, after the store had gone back to its ordinary Wednesday afternoon rhythm, and she leaned on the counter for a second and said, "You know what the best part is?" "What?" I said. "You had no idea. You just did it." She wasn't wrong, but I'm not sure that changes anything or was ever supposed to. You don't do something decent because of who might be watching. You do it because you'd want someone to do it for you, and because the opportunity is right there, and because it costs you $7. The rest of it is just what happened next. I still think about that Tuesday afternoon sometimes. Not the dramatic part, not the back office, not Craig's face when Diane said what she said. I think about the $7. The way I just had it in my apron pocket and the moment was right there, and it wasn't a decision so much as a reflex. That's the thing nobody tells you about doing the right thing. It usually doesn't feel like a moral stand. It feels like a Tuesday. What I've come to believe, after sitting with all of it, is that how you act when nobody's watching isn't just a reflection of who you are. It's actually how you become who you are. Every small choice either reinforces something decent in you or quietly chips away at it. I covered that grocery bill because I'd been in that position before, standing at a register with my card declined and people behind me, and I knew the specific weight of that moment. That knowledge, that capacity to put yourself in someone else's situation and feel it, is something you either practice or you lose. I'd like to think I've practiced it. And then there's what it took to keep showing up after Craig started his campaign, to document things carefully, to not let the small humiliations make me careless or bitter or loud in the wrong moments. That took something different. Not kindness, stubbornness maybe, or a refusal to let someone else's smallness determine how I carried myself. I've thought about that a lot too. The people I've admired most in my life weren't the ones who never got pushed around. They were the ones who got pushed around and didn't let it turn them into something they didn't want to be. That's harder than it sounds when you're on week 3 of unexplained schedule changes and a folder of manufactured write-ups. Bernard Holt built 43 stores over 30 years. He still walked into them unannounced. He still bought bread and soup and orange juice in a handbasket and stood in line like everyone else. The people I've watched accumulate real authority, not the Craig kind, the kind that actually means something. They tend to move through the world with a particular kind of quietness, not passivity, quietness. Like they have nothing to prove because they already know what they've built. I think that's the version of intelligence that actually matters in the long run, not the kind that gets you talking points in a performance alignment meeting, the kind that lets you read a situation clearly, understand what's actually happening underneath the surface of it, and act accordingly. Bernard saw something in that transaction, not just what I did, but what it meant about how I understood my job. And Diane Ostrov, when she started looking at the store, saw what Craig had built clearly enough to dismantle it in one afternoon. I don't think the universe was keeping score. I don't think I was owed what came after. But I do think that the way you treat people, the genuineness of it, the consistency of it when there's no audience, accumulates into something, a reputation, a character, a record. Call it what you want. It's real. Brenda brought me coffee from the gas station down the street on an ordinary Wednesday and didn't say much. Bernard nodded once in a way that meant something. That's enough. That's more than enough.